Well, I want to get to some of these questions because it looks like we have quite a bit. I'll try to go through them and touch on the main topics. Um, you don't want your spouse back. You're at a place now, you are praying for them, and you are settled, you are happy, you are at peace, and you are at a point where you just don't believe that you want them back. And what happens is we might be saying we don't want back what we had before. We don't want back what we are afraid of. We don't want back what we cannot envision. But you have to say to God, God, if you're going to bring my spouse back, I have a vision of the past. I can't even comprehend what a future, what a good marriage would look like. I've never had a good marriage. I don't have a clue. And I'm going to be honest, God, since I never knew my spouse to be that kind of a person, I'm struggling. To me, I just, you're asking me to go in a place where I just can't even go. So you're going to have to put that vision in my heart. You're going to have to help me with the expectation. You're going to have to help me get there in my belief because I'm just not there. So that is just a beautiful place for you, an opportunity for you to go to the Lord and let Him put a desire in your heart. Maybe you've given up a desire to be married, to be a couple, but He can restore that desire and put that back in you. It is how He created you. So just start praying for the Lord to put that. You might be afraid of that desire, afraid of being disappointed, so glad for what you have now, that peace, that you don't want anything to come and disrupt the peace. How do we deal with a lying spirit? And the first thing, well, not the first thing. The first thing was Sheila reacted in the flesh, and I just went, ugh, But then right away in my spirit, I heard the Lord say, don't ever give power to a spirit like that. And I did. The first thing I came in contact with, lying spirits in certain, people that I know. And I remember, having that lying spirit, on my husband. And I remember what it was like, and that's why my flesh completely just reacted to it the way it did. And I gave power to it because my first initial reaction was, oh my gosh, that's so hard. That is so hard. That's a powerful spirit. And right away the Holy Spirit came in and said, don't ever do that. You put that spirit right back into its proper place. And you don't magnify something through your experience with someone. You don't let something, become bigger than it really is. It is no match. It is no bigger than any other spirit out there. It is no different. It is no more powerful. It is, it's not an insurmountable. And just in a heartbeat, like someone can be delivered from any type of situation, any spirit, a lying tongue, a root of unfaithfulness, anything. And I know Melissa is here with us tonight, or she was. I don't see her on my screen, but let me see. Yeah, she's still here. Melissa has an amazing testimony. In a moment, God delivered her when she cried out from alcohol. And we looked at that spirit and think, okay, that's a really big, powerful thing to be snared in. And, I don't think for a second that God lines these addictions up or lines these snares up and gives them a rating of 1 to 10, what's hard and what's, going to be easier. I don't think that God does that at all. People do that. People look and measure and think, oh, that's Not an impossible, because I'm not allowed to call anything impossible, but I am going to call it, wow, that's darn near close to impossible. Or, oh boy, that's hard. Or just do what I did and kind of grunt at it. Not saying it, but kind of admitting it in your mind, which is exactly what I did when I read that question about the lying spirit, because it was like, ugh, I don't want to touch on that. That's a really powerful spirit. And, forgive me for that. Forgive me for magnifying something that, God just came right in and corrected. And don't give anything a measurement. Don't give anything a measurement. Sin is sin. It's all equally under God's feet. You just have to look at it that way. It's all under his feet. There is nothing that he can't, take and handle. So, let me get to the next question. And about that lying spirit, there's a lot of reasons why people will lie, and God can help you with wisdom on knowing how to pray for someone who has a lying spirit and why they need to lie. Uh, it, for someone that has to lie and can't stop lying, they are getting something out of it. There's something that the lie is feeding them. There's something that the lie is covering up. And there's usually really good reasons that they believe is a really good reason. So, God has wisdom to help you through anything. Anything that your spouse is going through, God can give you the wisdom to tell you exactly how to pray for them. So, okay, so you've got a spouse who's making up stories saying that I can't see my kids, my wife won't let me see my kids, when you know that you have never denied him from seeing his kids. But this is the guilty conscience. This is the snare. This is the hard heart that gets in there and weaves this web, makes up lies, makes up this deception, because they're in a place where they know they're wrong. They're in a place where they know that they are not being the parent they're supposed to be. And maybe he knows bringing the children around this new life is really a bad decision. But he can't admit that. He can't tell everybody that. He can't say, oh no, I can't bring my kids here. I can't bring my kids around this other person. I can't bring them to this place. But he can't say that. So instead, he would rather deflect, which is deflection, and put the blame onto you. So that's really what it sounds like. He can't admit the real reasons, so he has to try to come up with the next best thing and shift that blame where so he doesn't look bad, because obviously, he's the one that chose, where he's at and what he's doing and why he can't see the kids. And the other thing is, a lot of times they will say, they can't come over and see their kids because, the spouse is stopping them or something. But the truth is, coming home and seeing the kids, there is so much shame that they're just literally being tormented. I wish you guys could understand what shame does. It literally drives you running and screaming to get away from the situation. And, that's another thing. If he doesn't even feel that he can walk in that door peacefully without feeling so ashamed, he's going to come up with excuses why not to go. And this is not just for the person that asked this question. This is for anybody who has a spouse who cannot come over, cannot look you in the eye, cannot visit the kids, makes excuses, doesn't keep appointments. It's shame. It really is shame. Or it is just so much anger that being around that situation where they believe that they had to leave their home. They had to end the family because they're so angry at you for what you did that forced them, so that's another thing that they'll hold on to. She went into it being a lost. It's so funny how a lost person can enter into even more of a lost place to find themselves. But that's exactly what happens when you have someone who is already lost, who's already broken, who's already struggling, and they decide that they are going to become even more lost, more in the dark, more rebellious, um, more out of control with things. But that's usually what happens is you have a person who's going through life hanging on by a thread. And you have someone who is going through the motions. And like I said, they're already lost, they're already broken, but they're making it work. It's almost like, a functioning, alcoholic, a functioning broken person. And they're going through life with just enough to get them through where it's not too painful to force them to change. But God sees this place and He knows, you know what? My daughter will stay here forever. She will never move out of this place. She's just right there. And it's not too painful to get her to climb out. And it's not too whatever to get her to go deeper. And then maybe she has seasons where she will climb up a little and then fall back down. And, this is kind of, you know, a way that a lot of people live where you have these ups and downs in life, but it's never the drastic, up where you change and you transform, and it's never that drastic, hitting rock bottom where you're forced to change either. So a lot of times God will come in and say, enough is enough. Your spirit is crying out. Your spirit is saying, I need to know my identity. I need to wake up. I need to be born again. And when you come into that, like, sometimes we call a midlife crisis, but, it's a spiritual crisis. It really is a spiritual crisis where the spirit is just not unified with its father. It's not walking where it needs to be walking. And so that's why a person who's already lost will fall into an even deeper state of darkness and a deeper state of rebellion. They were already, in a place like that, but it just had to go much, much further to bring the change that God is looking for. And I've shared this, and I don't know if you were here the other night and heard me, but you know, we get into this place where we think that your healing is going, their healing and your healing has to come from the same place. During my 7-year storm, I was on my face day in and day out, crying out to God, reading the word, reading sermons, listening to worship music, okay? And God was healing me of many, many, many things. Now, my husband was living the exact opposite situation, walking an exact opposite way in his life. While I was surrendering and submitting my life and seeking God through, out my day, he was not surrendering. He was not submitting. He was not reading the word. Yet, for some reason, that man was walking parallel to me, that we both wound up at the same place at the same time in the end of our journey. So if that is not God, you tell me what is. That I came to the end of 7 years, and so did he. and he just stepped straight out of the pig pen at the cross saying, okay, I'm repenting. I'm done. I'm done with that life. And I want my marriage. I want God. I want it all. And here I had been on my face crying for 7 years. Now, don't even think that you could go off and have a fun, rebellious life and you're going to wind up, coming to the end of yourself. You could step out of the pig pen like he did. No, 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 no. We don't want to do that. But I just got this thought of someone going, well, if I could just go off and have fun, why would I want to be on my face crying every day? Yeah, don't do that, please. Don't say that Sheila just gave you permission to go live a fun, rebellious life, because, no, 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 no. But I'm trying to get the point is that, you know, you think that that spouse has to be on their face crying to God day and night. You think they have to be watching sermons. You think they have to be going to church. You think all these things, that's what God's going to heal them with, change them with, get them to repent. You think all of that because that's what you're doing, right? That's what you're doing. To you, that's what it looks like. That is the only logical and sensible thing. But I'm here to tell you how many of our spouses, when you've read the testimonies, okay, they will tell you that they were sitting right in the middle of their choices, right in the middle, smack dab, when the lights started to go on. They weren't laying on their face crying out to God when the lights started to turn on. Some of them are sitting in a bar and the lights are turning on. Some of them are driving, to be on a vacation with that other person and the lights are turning on. God is waking them up in their sin, in the pig pens, let's go through all of the different lost phases that Jesus says. The lost son was the pig pen, okay? That was a rebellious person, not married, and wanted to take his inheritance and just go blow it, just be greedy and live this, very sinful life. And he woke up in the pig pen. Okay, then we've got the woman who lost her valuable coin and she had to turn on the light. I related to this one because I felt like my lost coin was my husband and I was the woman who was living in a total mess. And I had to turn on the light and sweep my home to find the lost coin. And so you've got a coin who's just, sitting there waiting to be found. You've got a lost son, out living in the mess, waiting to wake up and see the mess. Then you've got the lost sheep who Jesus will leave the flock. And this is something I shared the other night. You've got all of us, right? We're all the sheep. We're sitting in this flock. We're sitting in the fold and we're just, we're sitting here and Jesus looks at us and says, hey, I gotta go. I've got to go and I've got to bring back this lost person. And we are like, okay, we're coming with you. We want to be part of this. We want to know what's going on. We want to dive right in. And, Jesus does not ask us to do that with this type of a lost person. With the lost coin, we had to sweep and clean up our home, right? Our spiritual house. With the lost son, the father just had to stay put and wait and watch the road. Okay. And with the lost sheep, you've got to stay in the flock. You've got to stay in the fold and you've got to let Jesus go be Jesus. You've got to let him go and do what he knows to do best. And you've got to trust him. And no, he's probably not going to give you day by day updates and reports of what's going on. And, you're not going to get those, daily updates, most likely. Sometimes you will, or sometimes you won't get an update, but you'll get an encouragement. He'll send something to come and encourage you while he's out searching. And you know what? And I don't even like to use the word he's out searching, because Jesus isn't searching. He knows exactly where your spouse is. And we can envision that Jesus is, wandering through this physical place and realm, but that's not it at all. Jesus goes after the heart. He knows exactly what in your spouse's heart needs to be touched to bring them out of whatever it is that is keeping them from Him. And there can be so many different reasons. For some, it's just, a rebellion because they are so lost and broken in their identity. They might be so covered in self-hatred or shame. And that's where the rebellion comes from. It comes from feeling that you don't belong. And when you are constantly in a place where you are feeling rejected, you'll start to get angry and push back, and you will start to be the rejector. You will start to walk around with this attitude that, you know what, you're gonna reject me, you're gonna tell me that I'm not worthy, you're going to hate me. And now this is someone who will actually feel this and perceive this against life, against God's creation. And they just walk around with such a big chip on their shoulder that they're always walking around, and their attitude is, I'm gonna be the first one to reject, and I'm gonna be the first one to mess things up, because to them it's a way to control. It feels so much better for you to reject than for you to get rejected. It feels so much better for you to take control and mess up your own life than all of a sudden get disappointed and discouraged and have a rude awakening that yet again, something happened. That's what people that self-sabotage do, is they will come in and completely wreck everything on their own without even realizing that's what they're doing. And it's because they are so terrified of being broken open with disappointment and hurt and feeling, again, life didn't go well for me. So, you'll have people who are doing, they've got a job and they're doing great. And the next thing you know, they're getting fired, or they're leaving, or they're doing something to sabotage, because they believe in their heart it's going to come. They're going to get rejected. They're going to get fired. So they're going to just do it themselves. And you also have people that will do that with relationships. They will sabotage the relationship because they believe at any time that person that they're with is just going to hurt them and leave them. And that does happen in marriages. And that sounds like a really deep subject, and one that I'm not willing to go there and talk about tonight. I am wrong for not sharing pictures of my daughter with my husband because of the fact that he was sharing the photos with the counterfeit. Oh, and blaming me for taking our daughter away. I'm not comfortable, nor am I feeling good about my daughter. So, oh boy. Okay, so if I'm getting this correctly, you don't want to share pictures to your husband of their child because you don't want your husband taking the photo and showing it to the other person. Okay, here's what I want to say about this. If you honestly, for a fact, know that that other person is using the photo to curse and cast spells, if you know that for a fact, okay, then that's one thing. But if you are using that as an excuse, and this is for your heart to determine, and I'm not accusing, but I'm going to give you both sides because I've been in this place where I would come up with fabrications because it sure sounded like the exact fabrication that I would need to get my way. And what my way was saying was, this is too painful. I absolutely do not want my husband to share my child with someone else. So I will find a way. I will come up with something that sounds logical, something that will make everyone agree with me. And that was me. Now, I'm not saying that you're doing that. If you honestly 100% believe that this person is going to use the photo to, do what you're saying that they'll do. But again, that's got to be something that God has said, I don't want this. And even then, there's this admitting factor that God is not strong enough to cover, the photo. And, we don't want to give too much power. We absolutely don't want to give too much power. I could sit here and say that because I know that there are people on YouTube going in the comments and casting things and speaking things. I get emails. I could say, you know what? I'm not going to put myself out into the public because I'm too worried about what would come at me. I can't do that. I have to say, you know what? Those things are going to come. It's part of life. It's part of the evil world we live in. And I'm going to do the right thing. And I'm going to trust that God is my protector. So you could also approach God with that and say, Lord, I want to give my husband photos of our child. If you are okay with that, if you're okay with me doing that, I'm asking you to protect my child, our child, and use the photos to bless my husband and use the photos to open his heart toward you and toward home. So, that's a whole different approach right there. It's also a different approach if you say, Lord, search my heart. If there is anything in me that is not pure in motive, if I have any other motive other than what I believe, then please expose it. So those were just a couple, like I said, I was not accusing. Those were just different, scenarios that you could explore. Would 100% agree with me that when we are in that place of disgust and pain, we've got to choose the high road, because showing a spouse that you are disgusted, you are, that word disgust is a tearing down. It is a looking down. It is a condemnation. And I'm telling you right now, I have fallen into that even this week. Even this week with my own spouse who was struggling in alcohol, that disgust would, come on me. And I would have to say, you know what it is, you know it, you can feel it, and you can, without even saying a word, you can portray it. You can posture yourself to your spouse. And it is a type of a emotion that is meant to hurt. It's meant to destroy. It is meant to tear someone down in a way that you're trying to say to them, look at you. If you don't grow up, shape up, change, you are beneath me. I don't like this about you. This is not, this is not pleasing to me. that is the mood of disgust. You are really pushing that onto someone, and because that's how you feel. You really do feel disgusted. You really are disgusted at the sin, okay? And that's where we need to learn that there is the person, and then there is the sin, and then there is our perception of my person that I love, my spouse, has now entered into this disgusting place and has embraced this place and enjoyed it. And so now the lines get blurred, where now we are disgusted at the sin, and now we're disgusted at someone we love stooping so low. And then, like I was sharing, what happens is we start to emit that disgust as a way to say to them, this is how I feel. And I need you to know how, how gross you are to me, how immoral you are to me, that now I can't separate you from the sin. I'm looking at you all together, and I'm telling you, a spouse that feels that from you is not going to give in to your disgust and give you the when we do these things, right? When we are disgusted, when we are hurt, when we are upset, we literally are reacting because we want them to change. Okay, this was the conversation that I had with God a couple of hours ago. Okay, and I'm going to be real and I'm going to be honest. Yes, I struggle greatly with anger. And I didn't even realize that I had fallen back in my life into some old um, control methods, old habits, because in my mind, in my head, I was not anywhere near as bad as I used to be. So instead of me going from 1 to 10 in the anger and control, I was jumping into maybe a 1 and then jumping right back out of it. Like a drive-by anger, just a snippy comment and then right back into peace. So I was not thinking that I was doing anything severely wrong like I'd used to been, right? But what was happening was all it took was for me to say that one little comment. One comment, guys. One comment. One look. One slamming of the door. 1 5-minute walking past, not answering someone, or just giving them a snide comment. That's all it takes. Okay? That's all it takes. And I had to go to God and I had to and let him say to me, Sheila, you know, you think you're not as bad as you were, but you are still impacting the same way you used to impact your spouse. And then this is what the Lord was sharing with me. Sheila, do you really honestly want your husband free? Do you want him to change? And I was like, why would God even ask me that? It was when God asks you a question, y'all, remember the man at the well? Jesus walked up and said, "Do you want to be healed?" It wasn't Every bit of that was in that question. Every bit. That was a loaded question when God said, Sheila, do you even want him free? And I had to stop for a minute and think, why is he asking me that? And it dawned on me because every bit of my anger and attitude was not conveying that to God at all. There was nothing about me being angry that was crying out to God to set him free. All my anger was doing was saying, I'm angry and I have a right to be angry, and I'm not even caring that I'm angry. And I was having this list of reasons and excuses behind the anger. And God was right. God was absolutely right with his question to me. Do you even want him healed? And when I sat there and thought to myself, why would he ask me that? And I realized it's because nothing about my approach was revealing that I wanted him healed. It was just revealing that I wanted to be hurt and angry and frustrated and just all of that. So I confessed. I got right on my face and I confessed to God, and I said, God, there's something in me that is convinced of something. I'm convinced of something, and I need you to break me. I need you to break me out of whatever it is that I am convinced of. And I need to learn and be serious about this. If I really want him free, then my anger is not the way. There are other ways. And that's when God started speaking to me and saying, Sheila, you were using your anger to try to get that man to change, right? And yeah, I was. I was trying to get him to change out of my anger. But I was not open to the possibility that there are other ways to help someone change. That is the message right there. I was only giving anger. That was it. That was the only option that I was using, because that's what I only wanted to use, was anger. And so God was saying, Sheila, there are other ways. Now, are they easier ways? Absolutely not, because anger is an easy way. It is easy for us, but it is the most damaging to them. Um, Operating out of disgust is the most damage to them, because these are all tearing apart, bringing shame, bringing condemnation. Okay? And when you want to do it in a different way, that means you first got to die to yourself. Okay, I was convinced that anger was the best way, because it just, I had a long list, and I'm not going to go over them, but I really did have a long list of why I believed that anger was the best way to get my husband to change. And God had to unconvince me, and he had to open me up to see that there really is a better way, a beautiful way, one that is not going to turn me into a monster, and one that is not going to tear my husband down. It's going to leave God an open door to work with my husband, and I'm going to be out of the way. And I really feel and believe that by me stepping aside, not entering into this place of anger, um, is going to remove the distraction, because without me even realizing it, again, I was pushing my husband into being more hard hearted, into being more obstinate, rebellious. When you've got a spouse who is in a place and they want to go to God, but then they've got a spouse who's constantly making you angry, constantly making you fed up with being accused. And so when you've got a spouse you know, who's trying so hard to get with God and be free, but they're constantly having to go to God and saying, God, my wife is hurting me with her actions. My wife is doing this to me. Then basically what you're doing is you are interfering. Instead of your husband or your wife having that time to go to God about their problem, they're having to go to God about you now being their problem. You get what I'm saying? I was creating a place that my poor spouse, my husband, had to now go to God and say, God, I need help forgiving her. God, I need help undoing all the shame she just put on me. And so, yeah, that's not good, you guys. Not good. That what I was doing to my husband without even realize, you know what? I probably darn well was realizing it, but I was just choosing not, because I didn't have it in my mind that it was really bad. It was just that quick dig or that quick, word or whatever I was doing. And so, yeah, you guys, no one's ever gonna probably be perfect at this because you just go day by day, constantly struggling because there's just new levels. There's new levels, and there's new what was the word I was just looking for? There's new deception. I was in a deception, my own deception, thinking because there was no way I was as bad as I was that I could get away with it. That was my deception. And I'm sure that, for him, he's probably thinking, well, you know what? I'm not drinking as much as I used to. So, I'm not near as bad. And that's probably his deception, which was triggering my deception. So yeah, definitely deceptions trigger deceptions. And, our go-to really most often is to become very angry, is to jump to conclusions and form opinions about why they're doing what they're doing. So, okay, go ahead.
Okay, so when I was listening to that person talk, I heard what I call a flag word. I heard the word disgust, and that triggers something in me because disgust is a very strong word. It's more than anger. And what that brings up for me is what the thought that went through my mind is it's possible that that person has some unhealed trauma, some things that have occurred in her past, maybe in her childhood or young adult life, or even in her marriage. And as she's walking through this season with her husband, essentially he is re-traumatizing her. And so the idea that she's back and forth, what it really comes down to is that when we experience trauma and it is not healed, what happens is that we have negative beliefs about ourselves, whether that is through sexual abuse as a child or neglect or dysfunction in our families. Whatever that trauma is, speaks to us about our identity and our value. And when we don't have relationship with the Lord, we have nothing to replace that with. So those things speak very loudly to us. And then we start to believe those things like I'm worthless, I'm disgusting, I'm useless, fill in the blank. Whatever negative belief that trauma spoke to us becomes part of how we see ourselves. And so you grow into adulthood and chronologically you've aged, somewhat emotionally you've aged, maybe somewhat spiritually you've matured. But those negative beliefs about self still exist until they are healed and the truth of God's word replaces those lies. So that's really what when I heard that word disgust, that is the very first thing that I thought of, was that there is possibly some unhealed trauma. And with this stuff that's happening in her marriage, her husband is bringing up those things.
Yes.
So how do you get to a place where you can forgive him? You need to go back and heal all of those negative beliefs and process those things with the Lord. For me, and I was this sort of brings up some stuff. I have spent many hours on a counseling couch and in the word and listening to teaching to heal. But it still breaks my heart for the little girl in me that went through the things that I went through as a child. And it took me a long time to be able to choose to replace those lies and negative beliefs about myself with the truth of God's word. Like I didn't even feel worthy to believe that the Bible or God or Jesus had anything to do with me, that he could love me, that he could accept me. that I was worthy of his love. And that is where that almost guttural, the word disgust, like that resonates so strongly with me. So I encourage you to spend as much time as you possibly can. You don't have to know how it's all going to be healed. You don't have to know how you're going to get past that. You just need to begin that process and trust that the Lord can handle what's happening with your husband and in your marriage as you work on you. I'm instantly reminded of the airplane mask analogy. You know, they tell us when we get on a flight that if oxygen is cut off to the cabin, put your mask on first before you help children or elderly. Why? That goes against our instinct, doesn't it? We want to protect our kids or people that can't protect themselves. But guess what? If you are not healthy, if you cannot breathe, you cannot help other people. So I really encourage you to spend some time, however long it takes, to replace those negative beliefs, listen to some sound biblical teaching about your identity in him, begin to spend time worshiping God, and it will absolutely feel like fake. And oh man, that's taking me back to when I walked through this season. It will absolutely feel like you're putting something on, and you may not even want to do it. I literally had to force myself to lay down on my bed and turn on worship music and participate in it, because I just had so much junk on me. But as I spent time with the Lord and listened to teaching and began counseling with a Holy Spirit-filled, Bible-believing therapist who has been able to walk me back through some of those experiences, not to relive them, but to identify the negative beliefs that those things spoke about me that I have carried my entire life, to replace them with the truth of what God's word says and what I want to believe about Melissa. That's where healing came from. And once you begin to walk through that healing and commit to that process, it's messy and it's hard, but I'm telling you, there's freedom on the other side. There is freedom on the other side if you will commit to doing that. God will meet you right there in the middle of that. And when you have some healing, when there's some wholeness to you, you will, as a part of that process, begin to identify the things in your husband that are broken and have compassion for him.
Thank you.
And have love for him, and be able to look toward forgiveness for the places in your life that he has re-traumatized you. So that is my encouragement to you. I will be praying for you. I feel a kinship in a way. There's a part of me that's identifying with where I used to be. And I really want you to know that I certainly do not have a perfect life. But I'm telling you, I'm living and walking in purpose and freedom and wholeness and healing now. And I never thought that would be possible. And I actually look at my husband and the situation that he is currently in with compassion, not anger, not disgust. So that's my encouragement to you.
Thank you so much, Melissa, because you really definitely touched on something that I didn't even share about, but it just really bore witness to my spirit, because I have confessed to my own spouse that my reaction to him comes out of me because fear is being triggered in me. So yeah, she was spot on that our disgust, when we get disgusted, it's a reaction that can be because we are being triggered from something, and it could be definitely a past trauma, And even places where, for me, because of my childhood, my triggers were fear. Fear would come, I would become so scared of losing him over to this thing that my fear would manifest as disgust. So you don't, Melissa was saying that you could have, something in your past which is being triggered, and it doesn't necessarily have to be, anything like she had mentioned. It could also be fear that triggers the disgust. So I just wanted to add that in, but that was really, really good, Melissa. I felt that you were getting something and definitely had to share something about that because, you know, you know, you're right. Disgust, there's something very, I pray that the Lord will open our eyes to how damaging that emotion is. It's almost like, we can become angry, but then we could go next level and take it into a disgust. And it's like, you know, we're really afraid or something. I think it really has a lot to do with disgust being triggered in an area where we're just too afraid to face. And maybe we are just terrified to ever revisit that place that happened in our past, like Melissa was saying, and to be healed. And so what we're doing is we're covering up. We're covering up with disgust because we just are not willing to go back. We're not willing to go back and heal and face what we need to face. So, yeah, I'm definitely going to have to go to the Lord now because I know that disgust has been one of my go-to reactions that just surface in me. And so it's definitely, thank you, Melissa. I'm going to have to go to the Lord and say, okay, Lord, I've got some unhealed places of trauma in me from my past, which is triggering fear, and I'm manifesting disgust to cover it up. So thank you for. You can have a spouse who believes that no matter what you're doing, it is always rooted and grounded in getting them back. So no matter what you do, they're going to believe it. So do you pull back all the way? You just be yourself. Do you have to dial it down? Maybe. Do you have to pull back a little bit? Maybe. Kind of let them in a way lead. If he's already expressed that he doesn't want you to go over the top with how you're showing love, or just being normal, let him lead. Hold back just a little, let him come forward. That's sometimes that's the best thing, is to just take your cue from them. If they're being super quiet, they don't want to look you in the eye, they don't want to talk to you, then that's your lead. They're not ready. Now, that never means that we react in anything less than just being, you know, as best we can. But no, that doesn't mean that you chase them down and you offer them food and you try to draw them into conversation. It doesn't mean any of those things. Respect to a man is, I'm putting out the signal. I'm not looking at you. I'm not talking to you. I'm not drawing you in. And you are pursuing me and you are trying to do this and you're trying to, overstep. To them, that is a disrespect. For a man, they're letting I'm putting up a boundary. I'm putting up, my, uh, expectation by showing you how I want you to treat me. So if just like if they were to come forward and ask you a question, they are expecting you to answer them. Okay? If they were to come at you angrily and with hostility, they would be expecting you to also come back at them with some type of an anger. So, like I said, they will lead. If they are coming at you with a respectful comment and you ignore them, then you are not letting them lead and you're not being kind. Or if they come at you with a respectful comment and you come back angrily, then again, you're not letting them lead. So I hope this all kind of shows you. You just let them, lead, you follow. And it could change. They could come into this situation really with their walls up, really expecting you to do everything that they're afraid that you're going to do. And then as the night wears on and they see that you are not doing any of those things, they'll let their guard down. They should become more comfortable. Maybe they'll test the waters, ask you a question, or just say
Hmm.
hi to see how you're going to react. Are you just going to respond and answer the question and say hi back, or are you gonna, barge through and just start talking them and opening things up and, using that as a way to, let's start talking about us, or let's start talking about
Hmm.
all the things that you didn't want to talk about. Those are some of the ways that we barge through and overstep, and that's why they keep their walls up with us, because in the past we have not let them lead. We have made it all about us and what we're gonna lead this conversation. We're gonna lead this time. So yeah, just let them lead. Let him lead, and it should teach him that you're a safe place and that you're growing and you'll be able to be someone that he can be around.